Amid an unrelenting struggle, a resolute black woman found herself desperately in need of financial resources to pull her family back from the precipice of utter ruin. Her heart was heavy with the weight of her family's future, each day a battle against an unforgiving tide. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell to avoid missing any videos. Concurrently, a wealthy businessman, entangled in his crisis, was driven by a similar desperation to preserve his faltering empire. He sought a fiancée not for love, but to restore the tarnished image of his business. When the web of deceit that connected their seemingly disparate lives was finally exposed, the revelation sent shockwaves through their circles, leaving everyone grappling with disbelief and astonishment. As dawn's first light began to seep through the narrow gaps in the blinds of Richard Sterling's luxurious office, which crowned a towering skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan, the room was steeped in an atmosphere of palpable tension. Richard, a 35-year-old tycoon renowned for his steely demeanor and unyielding control, stared out over the sprawling urban landscape. The city below, a mosaic of concrete and glass, seemed to reflect his state of being cold, unfeeling, and impenetrable. His once sharp and calculating blue-gray eyes, which typically surveyed his domain with precision, were now clouded with a rare and unsettling anxiety. His usually meticulously styled dark hair was now disheveled, a sign of his inner turmoil manifesting in an uncharacteristic display of vulnerability. The silence in the room was eventually broken by Marcus, his loyal assistant, who entered quietly, carrying a heavy briefcase with a sense of purpose. "Mr. Sterling, I've brought the profiles you asked for," Marcus said, his voice measured yet carrying the weight of the pressing situation. Richard accepted the folder with a distracted nod, his mind already racing with concern. "Thank you, Marcus. Is there any news regarding the investor meeting?" Richard's frustration erupted in a low, exasperated curse. It was exactly the kind of setback he had dreaded. The conservative investors, whom he had hoped to impress, placed as much importance on family stability and personal reputation as they did on financial performance. This was a hurdle he had anticipated, yet it was no less daunting. As his analytical mind raced to devise a solution, he felt the urgency of the moment pressing in on him. "Marcus, please cancel all my appointments for this afternoon. I have just come up with a new strategy that I believe could turn this situation around." Meanwhile, on the other side of the vast metropolis, within the modest confines of a small apartment in the Bronx, the piercing sound of an alarm clock abruptly jolted 28-year-old Emily Carter from her slumber. Her green eyes, still heavy with the remnants of sleep, struggled to focus on the clock's glaring display 5:30 a.m. She muttered a groggy expletive under her breath, swiftly springing from her bed. A new day of relentless hustle was beginning, and the weight of responsibility bore down on her shoulders. Emily hurriedly prepared for the day ahead. Her long brown hair was hastily gathered into a disheveled ponytail, reflecting the chaos of her life. Donning her khaki uniform, she rushed into the kitchen, where her 16-year-old sister Lily was already hard at work preparing breakfast. "Hey, sleepyhead," Lily teased with a hint of warmth in her voice. "I thought you were going to oversleep and be late again." Emily managed a tired smile as she grabbed a piece of toast, her fingers brushing against the worn kitchen counter. "No chance of that. I can't afford to lose this job," she said, her voice laced with determination. The sisters shared a look fraught with unspoken worries. Their family's financial stability had been teetering on the edge ever since their mother fell ill. The mounting medical bills were a constant strain, and Emily's dual job commitments were the only lifeline keeping them from sinking further into despair. Emily took a quick gulp of her hastily made coffee, her gaze shifting to Lily. "How's Mom doing today?" she asked, trying to mask the anxiety in her voice. Lily's smile wavered as she glanced away. "It's the same as before," she said softly, her words carrying a heavy burden. "The doctor mentioned that she needs a new treatment, but it's incredibly expensive. We're running out of options." Emily let out a heavy sigh, trying to muster some reassurance for her sister. "Don't worry, Lil. We'll find a way through this." She pressed a quick kiss to Lily's forehead, the gesture a small comfort amidst their shared hardship. Without another word, Emily dashed out the door, racing to catch the subway. As she journeyed through the bustling underground, her mind was a whirlwind of concern and determination. Every ounce of her resolve was focused on securing a better future for her family, no matter the personal cost. The day at the cafe unfolded with its usual chaos. The cafe was a hive of activity, rushed customers clamoring for their orders, jumbled requests, and tips that barely made a dent in her mounting worries. Emily maintained a facade of cheerful efficiency, but beneath her practiced smile, a gnawing anxiety consumed her thoughts. Just as she was beginning to feel overwhelmed by the relentless grind, he walked in. Richard Sterling, dressed to perfection in a sharp Armani suit, seemed an anachronism in the humble cafe. His presence was striking, his commanding demeanor contrasting sharply with the cafe's modest surroundings. His piercing eyes scanned the room before locking onto Emily, and he made his way to the counter with a look of purposeful intent. "Emily Carter," he inquired, his voice a blend of soft authority and intrigue. Emily's eyebrows knit together in surprise. "Yes, that's me. How can I assist you?" Richard's enigmatic smile grew slightly. "I believe we have an opportunity to help each other," he said, his tone calm yet unmistakably confident. "I have a proposition that might benefit us both." With a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, Emily followed him to a quieter table in the corner. Richard took a seat and began to outline his plan with precise clarity. He needed someone to pose as his fiancée at a critical social event, a role requiring someone who could convincingly project a story of romance and reliability to sway a group of conservative investors. Emily's mind raced as she absorbed his words. "Why me?" she asked, still grappling with the surreal nature of the situation. Richard leaned in slightly, his expression earnest and compelling. "Because you have something invaluable: authenticity. Your genuine presence and the compelling story of your struggles make you the perfect candidate to embody the image I need to project. It's a chance for you to secure some much-needed financial stability and potentially make a significant impact on your situation." The gravity of Richard's proposal hung in the air between them, mingling with Emily's cautious hope and burgeoning intrigue. Richard's eyes bore into Emily with an intensity that conveyed both his resolve and the gravity of his proposition. "You possess a quality that cannot be replicated: authenticity," he said, his voice steady and penetrating. "Moreover, I am offering you compensation that is not just generous but life-changing. It will cover your mother's mounting medical debts and ensure a secure future for your sister." The words struck Emily like a lightning bolt. Her heart pounded fiercely in her chest, a tumultuous blend of hope and disbelief. The idea of it was almost beyond comprehension. This man, with his polished persona and enigmatic offer, was presenting a lifeline that could alter the course of her family's life. Yet, she struggled to reconcile the madness of the situation with the urgent needs of her family. "What if I refuse?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain composed. Richard's smile remained intact, but it was devoid of genuine warmth. "If you decline, I'll seek another candidate. However, I doubt you'll find someone else as in need of this opportunity as you are." Emily closed her eyes briefly, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the decision before her. She contemplated the risks and rewards, her mind racing through the implications of accepting or rejecting Richard's offer. When she reopened her eyes, they were now filled with a steely resolve. "All right, Mr. Sterling, I accept your offer." Richard extended his hand, sealing the agreement with a decisive handshake. "Excellent. We'll start making arrangements immediately. Expect to begin soon." As they shook hands, the weight of the moment settled heavily upon Emily, She knew that this decision would lead her down an unpredictable path, but the promise of securing her family's future gave her the strength to embrace the uncertainty. As Emily watched Richard walk out of the cafe and blend into the bustling cityscape, an array of conflicting emotions swirled within her. A complex blend of hope and anxiety churned in her chest, leaving her to ponder the full extent of the path she had just set foot upon. The enormity of her decision weighed heavily on her mind, hinting at a future shrouded in opulence, intrigue, and possibly unforeseen emotions. Little did she know that this pivotal choice would not merely alter her circumstances but would catapult her into a realm of luxury and deception, where her understanding of love, loyalty, and success would be profoundly challenged. The evening air was crisp and tinged with a blend of promise and uncertainty as she made her way through the vibrant city streets. Each step she took was a step further away from the familiar and deeper into the unknown. The image of Richard's departing figure lingered in her thoughts, a harbinger of the dramatic changes that lay ahead. The dazzling city lights danced around her, reflecting her inner turmoil and excitement as she approached the Plaza Hotel, its grandeur looming before her like a gateway to another world. The hotel's ballroom was a spectacle of opulence, bathed in the golden glow of countless candles. The light flickered and shimmered off the crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes, creating an enchanting ambience. The room was filled with New York's elite, an extravagant display of haute couture and tailored suits mingling with effortless grace. Amid this sophisticated chaos, Emily Carter felt like a bewildered Alice stepping into Wonderland. The stark contrast between her modest existence and the splendor of the hotel was both exhilarating and overwhelming. As she stepped into this new realm, she could feel the weight of her decisions settling around her, marking the beginning of a transformative journey where every moment would challenge her perceptions and test her resolve. Emily nervously adjusted the pearl necklace draped around her neck, a lavish gift from Richard for the evening's event. The navy blue dress she wore, though stunning and impeccably tailored, felt like a heavy weight pressing down on her shoulders. Each delicate step she took seemed to amplify the weight of her anxiety. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heartbeat and regain her composure. Relax, Richard's voice murmured in her ear, his hand resting reassuringly on her back. You're doing wonderfully. Emily turned to meet his gaze. Her surprise was palpable as she noticed an unexpected warmth in his typically icy eyes. For a fleeting moment, she almost forgot that this entire situation was a carefully orchestrated facade. I feel like such a fraud, she confessed in a hushed tone, the guilt of deception pressing heavily on her conscience. Richard leaned in closer, his luxurious cologne enveloping her in its rich scent. You're the only genuine person in this room, he said, his voice low and earnest. Harness that authenticity. Let it be your strength. Before Emily could respond, they were approached by a distinguished middle-aged couple. The man, with his salt and pepper hair and genial demeanor, extended a welcoming hand toward Richard Sterling. What a delight to see you here this evening, he said warmly before his attention shifted to Emily. And who might this charming young lady be? Emily's heart raced as she prepared to step into her role. The weight of the evening's expectations hung over her, but she steadied herself, drawing on the strength Richard had encouraged her to find. As she prepared to navigate the complexities of the night, she hoped that her innate authenticity would indeed serve as her greatest asset. Richard's smile broadened as he draped a possessive arm around Emily's waist, a gesture that took her by surprise and added a layer of intimacy to their interaction. George, Margaret, allow me to introduce my fiancée, Emily Carter. Emily, this is George and Margaret Hawthorne, two of our most influential and discerning investors. The weight of the moment felt almost tangible for Emily. She knew that this was the pivotal test, the reason she had been brought into this world of wealth and prestige. Summoning her inner strength, she took a deep breath, her mind racing with the need to make a good impression. With a poised smile, she extended her hand, trying to project the calm and confidence she so desperately needed. "It's truly a pleasure to meet you both," she said, her voice steady and more assured than she had anticipated. Margaret Hawthorne's sharp eyes assessed her with critical scrutiny. "Carter? I don't believe I've encountered any Carter families within our social circle before." Emily's heart began to race, a pang of panic threatening to surface. However, she quickly recalled Richard's advice to remain authentic. She laughed softly, a touch of nervousness mingling with her attempt at warmth. "Oh, I'm not from that circle," Emily said, her tone light and conversational. "I grew up in the Bronx. My father was a mechanic, and my mother worked as a nurse." Margaret's eyebrows shot up in surprise, and George looked on with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. Richard, who had been standing beside her with a slightly tense demeanor, seemed to relax a fraction as Emily continued. "I first met Richard when he came into the cafe where I worked. He ordered a double espresso and, well, he ended up winning my heart," she said, her smile softening as she gazed at Richard with a tenderness that seemed both genuine and poignant. The unexpected sincerity in Emily's eyes and her heartfelt confession created a ripple of surprise among the Hawthornes. The contrast between her modest origins and the opulent surroundings seemed to add an element of authenticity to her portrayal. The genuine affection she displayed, coupled with her ability to remain composed and engaging in such an elite setting, was disarming. As Emily spoke, the ambience of the ballroom, the glittering chandeliers, the elegant dresses, and the murmurs of high society seemed to fade into the background. The realness of her story and the emotional resonance in her interaction with Richard brought an unexpected depth to the evening. The Hawthornes, taken aback by Emily's earnestness, exchanged glances that hinted at a shift in their perception of the young woman standing before them. Richard watched Emily with a mix of admiration and relief, his earlier tension easing as the initial introductions and potential pitfalls of their deception seemed to navigate smoothly. Emily's ability to bridge the gap between her own experiences and the grandeur of the evening setting was proving to be more than just a facade. It was becoming an integral part of the evening's charm and allure. Margaret's expression softened as she took in Emily's genuine and endearing demeanor. "What a delightful story," she said, her tone warm. "And how are you finding your way in all of this?" She gestured broadly towards the opulent surroundings of the luxurious salon, a world so different from Emily's own. Emily let out a laugh, this time with a genuine sense of amusement. "Honestly, it's a bit overwhelming. Just yesterday, I was stressing over how to make rent, and today I'm wearing a necklace that's probably worth more than my entire apartment," she said, her voice tinged with both humor and disbelief. George responded with a hearty laugh, his face lighting up with appreciation. "Oh, how refreshing to hear such honesty. Richard, you've truly discovered a rare gem here." Richard, who had been observing the interaction with a mix of surprise and admiration, nodded in agreement. "Yes, indeed. I found something truly special." As the evening wore on, Emily found herself becoming the focal point of attention. Her natural charm and disarming honesty captured the guests' imaginations. She shared heartfelt anecdotes about her upbringing in the Bronx, the struggles of managing her family's needs, and the challenges of caring for her ailing mother and younger sister. Rather than eliciting sympathy, her stories drew forth respect and admiration from the audience. An elderly woman with a twinkle of curiosity in her eyes approached Emily. "And how did you manage to keep your family together through such trying times?" she inquired, her voice full of genuine interest. Emily's smile broadened, lighting up her entire face. "With love, determination, and countless sleepless nights. But it's those very challenges that reveal our true strength and resilience," she replied, her words resonating deeply with her listeners. Across the room, Richard watched Emily with a growing sense of fascination. She was transforming what was supposed to be a mere pretense into a heartfelt narrative that touched everyone present. The investors he had hoped to impress were enchanted by her authenticity and grace. Emily's ability to weave her trials into an inspiring story was making a profound impact, turning the evening into something far more meaningful than Richard had anticipated. The blend of Emily's genuine warmth and her unexpected role in this high society gathering created a moment of genuine connection and admiration that went beyond mere pretense. Victor Lang, a prominent investor known for his critical stance on Richard's personal choices, made his way over to Emily. With a look of genuine admiration in his eyes, he said, "Tonight, you've truly outdone yourself, Emily. Your performance was nothing short of exceptional. I must admit, I'm profoundly impressed." Emily's face lit up with a radiant smile, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and disbelief. "Thank you so much. I never imagined I would find myself in this position, but it's deeply fulfilling to know I made a meaningful contribution." Victor, his gaze shifting to Richard, continued with a tone filled with deep respect. "It appears that not only have you made a wise business choice, but you've also made a remarkable personal decision. Emily is truly extraordinary." Richard, still absorbing the unexpected turn of events and the weight of Victor's praise, responded with a warm, reflective smile. "Indeed she is." As the evening drew to a close, Emily felt a profound sense of elation mingled with exhaustion. The impact she had made was palpable, and for a fleeting moment, she felt as though she had achieved something of profound significance. Meanwhile, Richard was deep in contemplation, his mind wrestling with more than just the success of his project. Emily's genuine warmth and authenticity had struck a chord deep within him, causing him to reevaluate his own emotionally detached and calculated existence. As they exited the event, Richard turned to Emily with a look of sincere admiration. "Tonight, you were nothing short of magnificent. I never anticipated that you would turn this situation around with such brilliance." Emily, still catching her breath and basking in the afterglow of the evening's triumph, responded with a heartfelt smile. "It was truly a collective effort, but I'm grateful for the opportunity you gave me." Richard's gaze softened with a new intensity. "It's more than just gratitude I owe you," he said quietly, his voice laden with sincerity and depth. As they departed from the opulent grandeur of the Plaza Hotel, the night air seemed to shimmer with the promise of fresh beginnings. Both Emily and Richard stood on the precipice of a journey that would reveal their lives to be entwined in ways neither had foreseen. This new path ahead promised to challenge their beliefs about love, loyalty, and the essence of authenticity in a world brimming with facades and pretense. Emily glanced anxiously at Richard before answering the gentle knock on the door. "It's a friend, Mom. May I bring him in to meet you with her mother's consent?" Emily guided Richard into the softly lit room. Richard's heart tightened as he took in the sight of the delicate woman lying in bed, but he was met with a warm, inviting smile that softened the harsh edges of his emotions. "So, you must be the renowned Richard," Sarah said, her voice frail yet filled with genuine warmth. "Emily has spoken so much about you." Richard was struck by a profound wave of emotion. Here was a family bound by deep affection, facing their trials together with unwavering support, a stark contrast to the isolated luxury he was accustomed to. They spent the morning immersed in heartfelt conversations, with Richard listening with rapt attention to the Carter family stories. He chuckled at Lily's witty remarks, was moved by Sarah's enduring spirit, and found himself increasingly captivated by Emily's presence. When it was time to part ways, Richard felt a profound transformation within himself. As they rode down in the elevator, his gaze met Emily's with a depth of newfound insight. "Thank you," he said with a quiet intensity, "for revealing what truly matters." Emily's smile was tender, aware that something significant had shifted between them. What had begun as a mere business arrangement was evolving into something far more meaningful and genuine. Richard, as he headed towards his car, felt an undeniable shift in his life's trajectory. Emily Carter had initially entered his world as a strategic element, but now she was becoming the nucleus of a profound change. Back in her apartment, Emily sat on her bed, her emotions swirling in a storm of introspection. She reached for her diary, a cherished habit since her teenage years, and began to write with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. Dear Diary, today Richard Sterling stepped into my life in a way I never expected. For the first time, it felt like he truly saw me beyond the facade I present at public events. He saw the real me. And the most startling revelation? I'm starting to glimpse the authentic Richard as well. What does this mean for us, for our arrangement, for my heart? Only time will reveal the answers. She closed the diary and gazed out the window at the ceaseless, sparkling cityscape. Somewhere in the vast expanse of Manhattan, Richard was also reflecting on the future, aware that their lives had intertwined in ways neither had anticipated. The city, with its endless lights and possibilities, seemed to echo the potential and the perils of their new path. Meanwhile, a few kilometers away, on the 50th floor of a towering skyscraper slicing through the night sky, a different drama was unfolding in the shadows. Victor Lang's office, a fortress of authority and strategy, provided a commanding view of the city that Emily was observing. Yet Victor's gaze was not captivated by the skyline but riveted on his computer screen, where the image of Emily Carter smiled innocently. His scrutiny was meticulous, each detail examined with the precision of a hunter studying its prey. Victor Lang's office, perched on the 50th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, was a towering emblem of ambition and authority. The floor-to-ceiling glass walls provided a breathtaking panoramic view of the sprawling city below, but Victor's keen eyes were locked onto his computer screen. There, an image of Emily Carter, her smile seemingly innocent, flickered before him. Leaning back in his plush leather chair, a cold, calculating smile curled at the corners of his lips. Victor's instincts told him that Emily Carter didn't quite fit the expected mold, and his reputation for unearthing deceit and exploiting vulnerabilities was legendary. "Miss Dawson," he commanded into the intercom, his voice smooth and authoritative, "arrange a meeting with our private investigator. I have an assignment for him." Meanwhile, across town in a quaint cafe on the Lower East Side, Emily and Richard sat at a secluded table, their steaming cups of coffee creating a small oasis of warmth between them. This was their first encounter in a public setting, away from the facades and formalities of their usual environment, and the air was thick with both nervousness and anticipation. Emily fidgeted with her spoon, her gaze occasionally meeting Richard's before quickly shifting away. So she ventured, striving to break the uneasy silence. How did everyone react after the event? Richard's face relaxed into a genuine smile. It was extraordinary. "The investors are buzzing about you. Emily, you've truly left a mark on them." A delicate blush warmed Emily's cheeks as she responded softly, "I was just being myself." Richard's voice was gentle and appreciative. "Exactly. That's what makes you so exceptional." Emily's eyes widened as she felt the intensity of Richard's gaze pierced through her. For a heartbeat, the world around them seemed to dissolve into a blur, leaving only the charged connection between them. Her heart pounded in her chest, racing in sync with the electric atmosphere. The intimate moment was abruptly shattered by the sharp, jarring ring of Richard's cell phone. He glanced at the screen, his face clouded with concern. "It's Victor Lang," he said, his voice laced with unease. A chill raced down Emily's spine. The memory of Victor's calculating, almost predatory gaze during the event had left her feeling unsettled. There was something about his scrutinizing presence that had unsettled her deeply. Richard answered the call, his demeanor growing increasingly tense as the conversation unfolded. When he finally ended the call, his eyes locked onto Emily's, filled with a deep concern that mirrored her apprehension. "Victor wants to arrange a meeting with me alone," Richard said, his voice edged with worry. "He mentioned having some questions about our relationship." A heavy fear settled in Emily's chest, making it hard to breathe. "Do you think he suspects something?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard reached across the table, his hand enveloping hers in a gesture that was both reassuring and electrifying. The warmth of his touch sent a jolt through her arm, mingling comfort with a palpable tension. "Don't worry," Richard said softly, attempting to soothe her. "Victor's known for his mind games. I'll handle it." Despite his reassuring words, Emily couldn't shake the gnawing sense that an ominous cloud loomed on the horizon, signaling that something troubling was about to unfold. In the days that followed, Emily found herself navigating a delicate balance between two distinct worlds. During the day, she remained firmly anchored in her routine in the Bronx, where her responsibilities centered around caring for her ailing mother and helping Lily with her academic endeavors. This daily rhythm, while demanding, offered a sense of familiarity and purpose that grounded her. However, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the city lights flickered to life, Emily's world expanded into a realm of new experiences and emotions as she met with Richard. Their evenings together were filled with both strategic planning for upcoming events and the simple pleasure of each other's company, creating a juxtaposition of intensity and tranquility. It was during one of these serene evenings that Emily found herself walking through Central Park, the soft illumination of the street lamps casting a gentle, golden hue over the path. The park, usually a refuge of calm amidst the urban hustle, seemed to echo the deepening complexity of her feelings. As they wandered along the tree-lined avenues, Emily felt a stirring within her realization that her connection with Richard had evolved into something far more profound than she had ever envisioned. She paused near a secluded bench, the stillness of the park providing a quiet backdrop for their conversation. The air was crisp, and the sounds of distant laughter and rustling leaves created an atmosphere of intimacy. Turning to Richard, her voice barely above a whisper, Emily said, "Richard, we need to talk about this." Her gesture, a sweeping motion between them, conveyed the depth of her emotions and the gravity of what she was about to discuss. Richard looked at her with eyes that reflected both hope and apprehension. The anticipation was palpable, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to stand still. "Emily, he began, his voice full of unspoken sentiment. But just as he was about to articulate his thoughts, the sudden, intrusive ring of his phone sliced through the tender moment. The abrupt sound was jarring, a stark reminder of the outside world encroaching on their personal space. Richard glanced at the screen, his expression tightening as he saw that it was Marcus, his assistant, calling with urgent news. The weight of the situation was evident in his furrowed brow and the way he quickly answered the call. Emily stood there, her heart heavy with a mix of frustration and concern, as the moment she had carefully prepared for slipped away. The park's serene ambience now felt like a poignant contrast to the storm brewing in Richard's professional life, leaving Emily to ponder the implications of their conversation and the future of their evolving relationship. "Mr. Sterling, I've just received an alert." Marcus's voice crackled through the phone with a note of urgency. "It appears someone is investigating Miss Carter's past. It seems to be a private investigator hired by Victor Lang." Richard's face drained of color. He glanced at Emily, whose growing concern mirrored his turmoil. "What's wrong?" Emily's voice trembled, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Richard ended the call with a sharp click, his mind whirling as he tried to formulate a plan. "Emily, Victor has hired someone to dig into your background." The fear Emily had been desperately trying to keep at bay erupted within her. "Oh God," she whispered, sinking onto the bench, as if the weight of the world had suddenly crashed down on her. "Richard, what if he discovers the truth? My family, they don't deserve to be pulled into this mess." Richard immediately dropped to his knees in front of her, clasping her hands in his with a fierce determination. "I won't let that happen, Emily. I promise." The urgency in his voice was laced with an undercurrent of dread. Even as he spoke, Richard knew that they were teetering on the edge of a precipice. Victor Lang's reputation for ruthless business tactics was well known, and if the truth about their arrangement were to be uncovered, the fallout could be catastrophic. The following day, Richard found himself in Victor Lang's office, the atmosphere charged with palpable tension. The room, with its sleek modern furnishings and expansive glass windows overlooking the city, seemed to reflect the high-stakes drama unfolding within. Victor leaned back in his chair, his demeanor calm but his eyes sharp, betraying nothing of his true intentions. "Richard," my friend Victor began, his smile more of a predatory smirk than a genuine expression of warmth. "I must say your fiancée is quite a fascinating character." Richard maintained a carefully neutral expression, though his mind raced. "Emily is indeed very special," he responded, trying to keep his voice steady. Victor's gaze intensified as he leaned forward, his eyes boring into Richard with an almost tangible scrutiny. "Yes, so special that she seems to have appeared from nowhere. Quite curious, don't you think?" The weight of Victor's words hung heavy in the air, each one laced with an underlying menace. Richard's pulse quickened as he grappled with the implications of Victor's probing question, knowing that any misstep could unravel everything he had worked so hard to protect. Richard's heart raced, but years of navigating high-stakes negotiations had honed his ability to maintain composure. He drew upon his well-practiced skills to deflect the unease threatening to overwhelm him. "Love has a way of surprising us, Victor," he said, his voice steady despite the tension. "I'm sure you can appreciate that." Victor's laugh, cold and devoid of warmth, reverberated through the room. It was a sound that sent an involuntary shiver down Richard's spine. "Oh, I understand perfectly," Victor said, his eyes narrowing with a calculating glint. "I understand that there's much more to this story than you're letting on." Back in her modest Bronx apartment, Emily was a whirlwind of anxiety. She had given Lily a sanitized version of the situation, presenting it as simply helping Richard with a business project, while carefully omitting the more intricate and troubling details. As Emily paced, her thoughts racing as fast as her footsteps, Lily watched her with growing concern. Lily said softly, her voice tinged with worry, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" Emily halted abruptly, her gaze meeting her younger sister's with a mixture of weariness and uncertainty. At that moment, she felt the weight of her responsibilities and decisions bearing down on her. "Honestly, Lil, I'm not sure about anything," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The sudden sound of a knock on the door jolted both sisters. Emily opened it to find a man in a sharp suit, holding a private investigator's badge. His presence was formal and authoritative. "Miss Carter," he began, his voice clipped and professional, "I have some questions regarding your relationship with Richard Sterling." Time seemed to slow as Emily stood frozen, feeling Lily's bewildered gaze on her back. The pressure of her deceptions pressed heavily upon her, and she realized with crushing clarity that she was standing at a pivotal crossroads. Her next decisions would ripple out, affecting not just her but everyone she held dear. With a heart weighed down by a profound sense of inevitability, Emily did the only thing she felt she could. She stepped aside and invited the investigator into her home. Meanwhile, in Victor's office, the atmosphere had thickened into a tense duel of words. Victor leaned back in his opulent chair, his fingers casually twirling an expensive pen as if it were a weapon in their verbal sparring match. "You know, Richard," he said, his tone laced with a blend of admiration and challenge, "I've always respected your business acumen, but I can't help wondering if this time you've ventured too far." The room seemed to close in around them as Victor's probing words cut through the air. Richard's mind raced, weighing his responses with the care of a chess master, knowing that every word could tip the balance in this high-stakes game. The stakes had never felt higher, and Richard was acutely aware that the outcome of this encounter could have far-reaching consequences for both his and Emily's futures. Richard maintained his outward calm, though inside he was a storm of anxiety. Every fiber of his being was focused on protecting Emily, his family, and his future. "Victor," Richard began, his voice steady but carrying a hidden edge, "whatever conclusions you think you've drawn, Before he could elaborate, Victor cut him off with an authoritative wave. "I believe I've seen enough for today," Victor said abruptly, rising from his chair and signaling the end of their tense meeting. Richard exited Victor's office, the weight of the encounter pressing heavily on his shoulders. The stakes had never been higher. Emily's safety, the integrity of their relationship, and his well-being were all hanging in the balance. He needed to find a way to outwit Victor Lang, to navigate this treacherous terrain without falling into the traps Victor had so meticulously laid. Back in the Bronx, Emily felt an oppressive weight on her shoulders as she faced the private investigator's relentless questioning. The room seemed to close in around her, and she struggled to keep her composure, her mind a whirlwind of dread and resolve. Every answer she gave felt like a thread in a complex web of deception that could unravel at any moment. Despite her efforts to remain calm, the fear gnawing at her insides was palpable. Victor Lang's scrutiny could turn into accusations at any moment, and the potential fallout was chilling to imagine. The future she had envisioned with Richard, the security and well-being of her family, and her very sense of self were now precariously at risk. As the investigator's questions continued, Emily's mind raced. She had always been a resilient fighter, but the current stakes were unprecedented. Her future with Richard, her family's stability, and her integrity were all on the line. She had to muster every ounce of her strength and resolve, knowing that any misstep could lead to catastrophic consequences. In the dim light of her apartment, surrounded by the echoes of her anxiety, Emily faced the harsh reality of her situation with a steely determination. As the private investigator departed, leaving Emily alone in the dim, somber confines of her apartment, her heart pounded relentlessly. Each beat was a reminder of the precariousness of her situation. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of thoughts and fears racing through her mind. She understood that the days ahead would be fraught with uncertainty and peril, but she was resolute in her determination. For herself, for Richard, and her loved ones, she knew she had to summon every ounce of courage and resilience she possessed. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, fading glow over Manhattan. The city lights began to twinkle, their brilliance painting a vivid tapestry of illuminated possibilities and hidden dangers. This sprawling metropolis, with its ceaseless rhythm and endless stories, mirrored the intricate and high-stakes drama unfolding in Emily and Richard's lives. Their narrative, fraught with tension and unresolved conflicts, was far from reaching its climax. Emily sat quietly, her mind a turbulent sea of reflection and resolve. The complexities of her situation weighed heavily on her, and as she gazed out at the glittering cityscape, she knew that their story was being shaped by forces beyond their control. Victor Lang's ominous presence loomed large over their future, casting a long shadow over every decision and action they took. In the quiet solitude of her apartment, Emily embraced the solitude, allowing herself a moment to contemplate the road ahead. The path was uncertain, and the challenges formidable, but she was steeled by the knowledge that only time would reveal the outcome. The journey ahead was one of courage, determination, and resilience. As the city continued its unending dance of lights and shadows, Emily resolved to face whatever came her way with unwavering strength and unbreakable spirit. The pages of their story were still being written, and every step they took would lead them closer to the truth and the resolution they sought. As we wrap up this chapter of Emily and Richard's gripping story, we're left with so many questions and reflections. Their journey has unfolded with unexpected twists, testing their courage, resilience, and the depth of their connections. As Victor Lang's shadow looms and the stakes rise, we see how deeply personal struggles intertwine with larger, more daunting challenges. So what have we learned from this intense and emotional narrative? How do Emily's bravery and Richard's determination resonate with your own experiences? We'd love to hear your thoughts on the key takeaways from this story. Share one lesson you've learned and how you plan to apply it to your own life in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and found it thought-provoking, please leave your comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more engaging content. Your support helps us bring more stories and insights to you. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.